Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's track guide for the IRO4. We are here at Long Beach Street Circuit in beautiful Southern California. I love street circuits. I love Long Beach because their surfaces are usually pretty bumpy, which means that every lap feels just a little bit different each and every time. It makes it super fun, super challenging. You also know where the track limits are because there are walls everywhere, but you want to get as close to those walls as you can without actually breaking your car on them if you want to find that extra little bit of lap time. The nice thing about Long Beach as well is overtaking is possible at the end of the main straight and the back straight, and even if someone makes a mistake, you can usually find your way around them. That said, I expect to make mistakes this week. You should probably expect to make mistakes this week if you are pushing yourself and trying to find the fastest possible lap time. Take it on the chin. It's no big deal. Everyone will eventually find a wall or crash out at Long Beach, but it is part of the fun, the excitement, the allure. So just make sure to enjoy yourself. Anyway, with all of that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the lap before we dive in and analyze it corner by corner. Before we get started, let's take a look at our track conditions. We have a 23 degrees Celsius track with 18 degrees Celsius air temperature and low usage at 21%. You should also note the wind direction this week. If you have a western wind, it will help you down the front straight in terms of top speed, and an eastern wind will help you on the back straight in terms of top speed. As for our laps, we did one tank of fuel. That includes an out lap that's not shown here, so you can get about 18 laps of fuel from start to finish on a race with the fixed setup. We do have a couple laps that we could have talked about, probably this 18.2, this other 18.2, this 18.3, and this other 18.3. This final lap with the 18.3 was actually the one I was hoping to use until I got to the final corner. And that brings up a point here. The final corner is probably the most important corner. Not only does it set you up for a good launch down this main straight, but just launching out of that corner in general can give you some separation for defending as well as attacking. And that run from that final corner to the line is actually a big one, which is why our fastest lap is actually our best lap this week, because we get a great launch out of that final corner. There are some bobbles throughout this lap elsewhere that were cleaner on some other laps. But because the final corner is the most important corner this week, I did want to highlight the lap where we really got that right. Anyway, again, this is a very bumpy circuit, so mistake slides will happen. That's why it's very, very difficult to kind of put a full lap together, but we will talk about some of the little bobbles that I had here, and then our goals and how to keep the car stable in every single corner. So let's go ahead and dive into those details. Heading down the main straight, we want to hug the wall as tight as we can to reduce our distance traveled heading towards turn 1. Turn 1 comes off of the fastest part of the track at the end of the main straight and into a slower, tight technical section. Most of the time, this would mean that we want to go fast in and slow out to take advantage of the speed we have at the end of the straight. The problem with doing this on a street circuit is there is no room for error on exit. We're already aiming to be as close to the wall as we can so we don't have room to make corrections on exit and still avoid making contact with the wall. Even if we do go too fast and are able to avoid the wall, now we have an issue of being very much off pace and not giving the cars behind enough time to react, which likely still means getting collected. This is further exaggerated a bit in turn 1 by the exit wall being slightly curved towards us, which tightens the exit just a bit as well. Because of this, we need to change our approach slightly to ensure that we can have a safe exit, which means taking the entry a little bit slower than we normally would if we were at a track with runoff. This also helps us keep the car more stable on exit, and if we find we've slowed too much, we can always get back on throttle a little earlier. We can start braking right in between the 400 and 300 boards, or where the pit divider line goes from 3 lines to 2. We're going to brake hard with our eyes at the apex, being careful not to drift too far over into the pit exit lane. If we drift too far over into the pit exit, there is a slowdown penalty there. As we start turning in and approaching the apex, we need to smoothly release the brakes as we aim to maintain good balance with the car. The apex curbing at turn 1 is raised slightly, and while some cars can use the raised part, I found the F4 is a little too stiff to take advantage of it without causing issues with car stability, so we're aiming to use all of the flat part of the apex curb while avoiding the raised bit. As we get to the apex, we should be able to get back on throttle pretty aggressively, and we'll continue turning through the exit as the car drifts out towards the wall. As soon as we join up with the wall, we'll immediately shift our attention to the short run to the fountain. Turns 2 and 3 bookend our run around the fountain, and I think our approach here means talking about them together is probably better. I generally think about them as one corner, with the apex being the fountain curbing. If we talk about the turns individually with this in mind, we're aiming to be fast in for the entry of turn 2 and fast out for the exit of turn 3, using the transition in between the two as our slowing phase. As we come out of the turn 1 exit, we're trying to line our car up to brush past the turn 2 apex wall on a direct path towards the fountain curbing, which allows us to straight line brake all the way into that curbing. This allows us to take the turn 2 apex with relatively high speed for that corner. That said, we do have to be careful not to overshoot the exit here, or we'll have a hard time cutting back to make a good run out of turn 3. As we get to the curbing, our goal is once again to stay off the raised part of it, which can unsettle the car, and we want to hug the flat part of the curbing until we can spot the turn 3 apex wall. As soon as our eyes can see the turn 3 apex wall, we can aggressively get back on throttle and aim to brush past the apex wall as we exit the fountain section and head down towards turn 4. On this particular lap, you can see I got a little loose mid-corner, which does hinder my ability to rotate and get back on throttle for the exit, which probably cost us about a tenth or so. In this particular scenario, I just carried a little bit too much speed through the entry of turn 2. Turn 4 is a lot like turn 1. We have a raised apex curbing and the exit tightens on us slightly as the track bends uphill towards turn 5. Because we're exiting uphill slightly, we're also fighting gravity, so having a smooth and controlled exit becomes even more important for our speed on exit. Heading into turn 4, we don't have a massive amount of speed because we've just exited the slower fountain section, so we don't need to slow too much. Just a slight brush of the brakes as we turn in will help the car rotate and slow enough to keep us in control as we come through the apex. At the apex, we want to be careful to once again only use the flat part of the curbing, as the raised area will unsettle the car and can push us wide into the wall on exit. As we come through the apex, we can start to get back on throttle and let the car run all the way out to the wall. One trick here, and with all other exits at a street circuit, is never look directly at the wall. Even though we want to get as close to it as we possibly can, and we normally want to look at the exit curbing for a corner, our hands will take us where our eyes are looking. In this case, we don't want to be looking at the wall because we don't want to end up in the wall. So instead, as we come through apexes on a street circuit, we want to look a little bit further up the track at a bit of road that we want to end up at a little bit beyond the exit. This will prepare us to get to that area without drawing us into the wall in the process of getting there. Turn 5 is a fun one because we're dealing with some slight elevation change. We're heading uphill towards the apex, which is also the crest of the hill, so the exit drops away from us slightly. We also have an interesting decision to make about how we take the apex. There are some bumpy curbs here that we could choose to either ride over or not use much at all. I found lap times were pretty close between the two, so it might be worth experimenting to see which one works better for you. That said, after trying both, I personally like turning in slightly earlier and using more of the curbing. That's just been a little bit more consistent for me. The car does take a little longer to settle on exit because it's bouncing around, but taking a little bit more apex leaves us a little bit more room on exit to handle that. We can start braking as we approach the end of the darker pavement, and we can brake a little bit less than normal since we have gravity to help us slow down. As we turn in, we want to trail off the brakes, and by the time we get to the curbing, we want to be completely off the brakes to help lift the nose of the car over those curbs as we ride over them. As we bounce over the curbs and start to settle on the other side, we want to get back on throttle, and we could use quite a bit of exit because the tire wall ends and gives us a bit more room to work with. But remember, always keep your eyes pointed as far up the road as you can. Turn 6 is another turn where we have a slightly tightening radius on exit as the wall curves back towards us for what is technically turn 7, but really isn't much of a turn for us at all. We also head downhill slightly on exit and need to work our way back over to the left side of the track for the next corner, so we don't want to drift too far out towards the exit wall, or that journey back across the track can be difficult. On the whole, our goal here is to simply get as close to the apex wall as we can and hold a relatively tight line on exit to make sure we can easily come back to the left side of the track for the braking zone of the next corner. We can start braking right around the 200 board, and once again we're looking to calmly trail off the brakes as we head for the apex to maintain good balance. We're looking to get as close to the apex wall as we dare, and we can get back on throttle pretty much as soon as we get there. On exit, we'll maintain our turning arc as we head through the not-so-turny turn 7 as we make our way back across to the left side of the track to set up for turn 8. Turn 8 is right up there with the final corner as one of the most important because it leads on to one of our two long, flat out, not so straight straights. Because of that, our exit is our focus to get a good launch and run down this back straight. As we enter the turn, we also need to keep in mind that we're heading slightly downhill on entry, so we need to be careful not to dip the nose too much under braking as we turn in. We're once again looking to get as close to the wall as possible at the apex because the curbing there is just paint and it's easy for us to glide right over it. We can start braking around the 200 board, and we want our eyes to be focused on the apex as we start to head towards it. Key here with your eyes is don't stare at the apex wall, stare slightly off the apex wall because once again, our hands will take us where our eyes are pointed. We're aiming to get as close to the wall as we can, and as soon as we know we're going to make the apex, we can start to get back on throttle, with our goal being to maintain that through the exit to get a nice run down the back straight. So we're going to extend our exit as close to the wall as we dare once again. Keep in mind that too much speed on entry can lead to a very sketchy exit. It may cause us to lift or lose the rear of the car, but ultimately we're going to lose time down this back straight. So if you are getting loose on exit here, try to slow a little bit more in the braking phase. Turning in too early here will guide us directly into the wall on exit and likely lead us to us either crashing or having to lift to avoid crashing, and turning in too late can make rotation difficult because we're going slightly downhill, which can make finding the apex difficult. If you find you're struggling with either of those things, try to adjust your turn-in point accordingly. Turn 9 is a lot like turn 1 in that it comes at the end of a long straight. The difference now is we have curbing at the apex that we can cut and a lot more room on exit to play with, so we can try to carry a little bit more speed in and use a little bit more of the entry to help slow the car. That said, the entry here is very bumpy and it's very easy to lock a tire or lose the rear because of the bumps and slight elevation change on exit, so it's a difficult balancing act. This also leads us into a final series of corners that includes the final turn, so exit speed here isn't necessarily important, but stability on exit is, so we can set up for the next sequence. We can start braking right around the 300 board, and we want to turn in, aiming to use a healthy amount of the curbing at apex. We're going to trail off the brakes as we head into the apex, and there is a limit to how much apex curbing you can use because there is a slowdown penalty here if you use too much of it. It also does get very rough and bumpy the further you go in. Where our line is on this lap is pretty spot on. As we get into the entry curbing, we want to make sure we are bleeding off those brakes smoothly, and as we come through the exit, we want to allow the car to settle as we slowly get back on throttle. As we come through the exit, we're also looking to hold our arc as we aim to work our way back to the right side of the track to open up as much as we can for the turn 10 double left-hander that's coming up next. Turn 10 is a long double apex left-hander. Our goal here is really to think about how we're setting up for the final corner as we head through turn 10, because the exit here blends directly into the braking zone there. Remember, the final corner onto the main straight is the single most important corner for us to be able to set up passing opportunities or defend our position, and has a large impact on our lap times, so we don't want to compromise ourselves there by being too aggressive in turn 10. As we transition out of the turn 9 exit, we're looking to keep the car very stable as we come through turn 10, so we want to reduce the amount of pedal input we need altogether. Because of this, we're going to lift and do a bit of coasting as we try to maintain balance with slight throttle input later on in the corner. We want to use as much of the curbing as we can at each apex as we aim to hold a nice tight line. I found that trying to run a wider line here really causes more issues than it solves by making it difficult for us to get back to the braking zone for turn 11. As we come through the second apex, we want to hold that tight line on exit and straighten up as quickly as we can so we can start our braking for the final hairpin at turn 11. Once again, the turn 11 hairpin is the most important corner on the track, and it's really all about the entry dictating our exit, and the exit is where we're trying to find the lap time. With that in mind, we're looking for a pretty slow and controlled entry that lets us get to a slightly later apex and get back on throttle as early as possible. If we try to brake too late here or come in at too narrow of an angle by not using enough entry curb, we're cutting off our ability to get to that late apex, and we'll have to run deeper into the corner before we can get on throttle. If we do that, we cover more distance at a slow speed and limit acceleration out of the corner, which compounds to lose us a ton of time. If we're trying to attack the car ahead or defend from the car behind as we head into turn 1 on the next lap, it all starts at this hairpin, and if we don't get a good exit, our ability to attack or defend down that straight and into turn 1 is greatly compromised. As we come through the final apex at turn 10, we want to stay tight and use all of the curbing on the exit as we aim to straighten up the car immediately. As soon as the car is straight, we want to get on the brakes and slow the car down while maintaining full control of the car. As we turn in, we want to bleed off the brakes and be careful not to lock up the front tires as we rotate through the corner. We want the car to be slightly pointed down the straight as we get to the apex so we can start to get back on throttle aggressively for a smooth and speedy exit. Once again, we want to run all the way out to the wall on exit to give us the most track to work with while we keep our eyes as far up the track as we can so we don't look ourselves into the wall. It's a difficult sequence that takes a lot of focus. If you find yourself locking up on entry, try to brake a little bit lighter and earlier into the entry. If you find it difficult to set yourself up on entry, remember that it all starts by not pushing too hard through turn 10. Finally, if you find yourself ending up in the wall a lot on exit, you probably need to apex just a little bit later or brake just a little bit more to help rotate the car through the corner before you get back on throttle. If you do everything right here, you'll be set up for some great attacking and defending as you head out of this hairpin and back down the main straight to complete your lap here at Long Beach. Before we go, I want to give a huge shout out to anyone who has liked, subscribed, or commented. All of that kind of stuff lets me know that you are enjoying these and gives me the motivation to keep making them. That said, if you have enjoyed this, please press that subscribe button because that will eventually help me to get to a YouTube partnership at some point in probably the very distant future. Also, if you haven't come and watched me on Twitch, it is twitch.tv/elgatoconlapipa. There is a link in the description below if you would like to follow me on Twitch to get notified next time I'm live so you can come hang out with me, maybe race with me, chat with me, or just watch some live racing in general. Speaking of racing with me, if you want to come race with me, I do help run an F4 racing league called Alt F4 Racing League. Me and my buddy Chaz Weber run that league along with our buddy Adam Wright. Our goal there is clean and good hard racing. So if you're interested in that, there is a link to a Discord link at sundaynightskippy.com. Just go ahead and follow that. Join our Discord, follow the instructions in information to find out how you can join that league. I'd also want to give a big thanks to moradness.com. Daniel Morad, great, lovely character, awesome guy. If you've never watched his stream, you should absolutely do that. But if you've never visited his site, those are actually the gloves that I use. He's provided us with a discount code ELGATO for 5% off your purchases at moradness.com. So if you've never checked that out, go check that out. Maybe give Dan some love and give me some love in return by using that promo code. Anyway, enough about the babbling, enough about the shilling. I just want to say good luck out there in your races this week. Remember, make sure to have fun. It can sometimes be frustrating at a street circuit where you're struggling with bumps and stuff like that. Track conditions change, and all of a sudden it feels like you have no grip. You've met a wall, you've damaged your car, someone's spun in front of you, someone's collected you, making a mistake. Just remember to go out there and have fun. We're racing at an awesome historical circuit where both F1 and IndyCar have raced. And yeah, it's just incredible to be here. So remember to enjoy it, but good luck out there, and I hope to see you on track. Until next time, take care of yourselves.